Many antique items, besides providing beauty, also hide mysterious stories within. Just like the story in this house where a family member bought a large antique mirror, but something came along with it. And this very thing almost took the lives of the family members. Before we dive into our scary story, we would like to ask everyone to like and subscribe to support us in continuing to bring you more terrifying tales in the future. This story is about Paris. It is her first-hand experience during the time she was studying pastry making. Since her home was far from the pastry school, she stayed temporarily at her friend's house while attending classes. Her friend's house was a 3-story building with 4 residents: Paris's friend and his girlfriend, and their 2 children, a daughter named Katie and a son named Gabe. Both children liked to call Paris Aunt Paris. The ground floor of the house was a car accessories shop. The second floor had the bedroom of Paris's friend and his girlfriend, and a room shared by Katie and Paris. The third floor had Gabe's bedroom, adjacent to the former maid's room, which was currently unoccupied. Paris was quite close to Gabe, who was a high school student. He often chatted and joked with Paris, sometimes teasingly offering to wake her up early for school because he didn't sleep, although he said this in a lighthearted manner. During her stay, Paris always felt something odd on the 3rd floor. She often heard footsteps and sometimes heard Gabe talking to someone, even though he was alone upstairs. One day, she directly asked him, "Gabe, who are you talking to? I hear it every night." Gabe looked at her and replied, "You heard that? I was just talking to myself. Nothing serious." But he seemed to be hiding something. Paris insisted she really heard it, and Gabe fell silent. That evening, Gabe's sister, Katie, approached Paris and asked, "Aunt Paris, have you heard any strange noises? I hear footsteps upstairs almost every night, but I'm too scared to say anything." Some workers also mentioned that while they were cutting car mirrors and dozed off, they felt someone pull them off the chair, but no one was around. This has happened several times. The maids here also never stay long. They come and go quickly, and we still haven't found a new one. At that moment, Katie's mother came over and told her, "Don't tell Aunt Paris scary stories. She has a sixth sense and can already sense these things." Paris thought her friend didn't want Katie to scare her, but Paris wasn't afraid of such things. She found them more annoying. One day, the noises upstairs grew louder, disturbing Paris's sleep. Frustrated, she decided to investigate. The sounds seemed to come from Gabe's room. She knocked on his door, and when he opened it, she asked, "Gabe, who are you talking to? Is anyone in the room?" Gabe's face turned pale, and he tried to joke it off, saying he was on the phone with his girlfriend. Paris didn't believe him, as the footsteps and voices clearly came from the room. She decided to open the door and look inside. At that moment, she felt a sudden energy pass through her body, but it was brief. She looked around the room and found no one, then returned to her own room. The next morning, driven by curiosity about what was really upstairs, Paris decided to go up and take a look at the maid's room, which she had never visited. She opened the door to the maid's room and found a large, very old mirror standing there. The mirror was almost shoulder height, resting on the floor. What made it even stranger was a long, diagonal crack running through it. At that moment, Paris didn't know what she was thinking, but she suddenly reached out and touched the mirror with her finger. Instantly, she felt a shock, as if she'd been electrocuted. Her finger remained numb afterward, and she thought to herself that there was definitely something unusual about this mirror. That night, Paris felt she had to do something about the mirror. While she lay in bed, Pondering, she started to drift off to sleep. She then felt as if someone was walking to the end of her bed. At first, she thought it was Katie coming to bed, but when she turned to look, Katie was already asleep beside her. Paris tried to get up to check, but found she couldn't move. She strained to turn her head and see who was there, and then a woman's voice spoke from the foot of the bed. "If you are staying here, stay quiet. Don't interfere." Paris's mouth could still move, so she asked the woman, "Who are you?" The woman replied, "I have liked this boy for a long time, for over 10 years. Next year, I will take him with me." Paris immediately responded, "No, you can't take him." The woman then warned Paris, "If you don't stop interfering in my business, you won't meet a good end." Paris then jolted awake. She thought at first that she had just been dreaming. She was about to get up and open the door to go check on Gabe, but as she reached for the door, there was a sudden knock. She quickly opened the door but found no one there. Realizing now that what had just happened was not an ordinary dream, Paris was determined to protect her nephew from being harmed by a ghost. She grabbed the amulet hanging by her bedside and put it around her neck, then headed straight to the 3rd floor. As she walked, she saw that the doors to both Gabe's room and the maid's room were open. She also saw a woman walking beside Gabe, leading him into the room. Paris reached the midway point on the stairs and tried to get a clearer look at who was walking next to Gabe. Suddenly, the woman slowly turned her head while her body remained facing away from Paris. Her eyes were blood red, as if they were about to burst out. Paris froze in place. Then, out of nowhere, a child appeared standing next to the woman. This child was dressed like those seen in old photographs, but the terrifying part was that the child had no head. Paris tried to steady herself. At that moment, the child extended his hand, which was unusually long, and pushed Paris hard, causing her to stumble and fall down one step of the stairs. She managed to hold onto the railing. The woman then took the headless child's hand and led him into Gabe's room, closing the door with a loud slam. Paris tried to call out to Gabe, but no sound came from her mouth. She decided to walk towards Gabe's room, taking one step at a time, feeling weak and shaky. She began reciting the Chinabunkern Katha in her mind while slowly pulling herself up using the stair railing until she reached Gabe's door. Paris immediately opened the door. At that moment, the lights in Gabe's room went out. Initially, the room had been brightly lit, but now only a faint light from outside illuminated the room. Gabe was startled to see Paris enter. "Aunt Paris, how did you get in here?" His voice was filled with fear, as if he was hiding someone in the room. Paris shouted, "Gabe, turn on the light now." The room was very dark, and Paris didn't know where the light switch was. Suddenly, Gabe screamed in the dark, "Aunt Paris, help me, help!" Sensing danger, Paris frantically searched for the light switch on the wall. Finally, she found it and turned on the light. As the room lit up, Paris saw Gabe lying on his back on the bed, with the woman straddling him. Shocked, Paris quickly threw the amulet she was wearing at Gabe, and the woman disappeared instantly. Gabe, lying on the bed, found himself unable to move. "Aunt Paris, I can't move. Help me." Paris hurriedly placed another amulet around Gabe's neck, and he gradually began to recover. Paris rushed downstairs and banged on Gabe's mother's door, waking everyone in the house. They all gathered in Paris's room, where she recounted the entire story. Gabe's mother, shocked, asked him what had happened. Gabe then revealed the whole truth. He explained that ever since his father brought home that mirror and placed it in the maid's room, he had been seeing a beautiful woman who frequently invited him to sit and talk and even to make love almost every day. This had been going on for nearly 5 years since the mirror was brought home. Gabe's father loved collecting antiques and would store them all in the maid's room, which drove away every maid they hired. Gabe continued, saying that every night the woman would visit him. He hadn't had a proper night's sleep in years, but still managed to attend school. He avoided interacting with others and would rush home after school to wait for the woman's 2 a.m. visit. He didn't tell anyone about her because she hadn't harmed him, and he didn't feel the need to mention it. Gabe also mentioned that he had promised his grandfather that he would become a monk, but he had never fulfilled this promise because he was entangled with this woman every day. His mother was very shocked upon hearing this and discussed with the family what to do next. Paris suggested bringing in a monk to perform a ceremony. She contacted a respected monk she knew and arranged for him to come the next day. The next morning, the monk was already waiting in front of the house. Everyone hurried to open the door, which was a rolling steel door that needed to be pushed up. As soon as the door was opened, the monk immediately remarked, "I just saw a child wearing traditional Thai attire run into the house, as if they were fleeing." Everyone was shocked because no one had told the monk anything yet. Soon after, the monk began the ceremony and sprinkled holy water throughout the house. When he reached the maid's room, he walked straight to the large mirror and declared that there was a ghost in the house and that the mirror needed to be destroyed. Someone fetched a hammer and struck the mirror forcefully, but strangely, it did not break, despite the strength of the man hitting it. They tried with someone else, but the mirror still wouldn't break. Paris then asked to try smashing it herself, remembering the odd feeling she had when she touched the mirror before. When Paris struck the mirror, it shattered into small pieces. The monk then spoke to the shattered mirror, saying, "Come with me, and I will take you back to the temple." However, it seemed that the woman in the mirror was unwilling. The monk asked, "What will you do? You can't stay here. You need to go where you belong. You can't take his life." The monk then turned to everyone and said, "She refuses to leave. When I communicated with her, she said, 'I won't go. I will stay here. This house cannot be lived in anymore. You all must move out within 3 days because this ghost insists on staying here." Paris suddenly remembered there was another child in the house and asked the monk about the child. The monk explained that the child was the son of the ghostly woman, a widow ghost trying to find a husband to be the father of her child. The whole household was shocked and scared, so they had to move out as the monk advised. Since then, the house has been up for sale. While relocating, the car accessory shop sign had to be dismantled and reinstalled at the new place. One day, a worker came to remove the sign, and as he climbed up the ladder, he felt as if someone pushed the ladder, causing him to fall and almost break his leg. Other workers experienced similar incidents, so the sign remained there. Next to the shop was a karaoke bar where a woman would sit in front every day. One woman from the bar recounted that she often saw someone in the first floor living room of the house at night, staring at them. Initially puzzled, she later found out that no one lived there, causing employees to quit one by one. They would also hear sounds of people walking and dragging objects in the house. Eventually, the karaoke bar closed down. To this day, the house remains for sale, along with the neighboring building. This is the entire story that Paris experienced.